only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
The National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm warning.
Welcome to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast, where prepping doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. Coming to you from a well-defended off-grid compound high in the mountains. Coming to you from his Florida room in Richmond, Virginia. Neither off-grid nor well-defended, unless you count as chickens and cats. Here is your host, Keith.
Hey everybody, this is Keith and welcome back to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast. It is Sunday, March the 16th, 2025. And I want to talk a few minutes about, let me just ask a question. Do you think you are prepared? And when I say that, there are a million different scenarios, a million different situations that we are directly or indirectly involved in every single day. Some we pay more attention than others. Here's an example of something that happened today. Now, we would all think, I'll digress for a sec, we would all think whether it comes to an SHTF situation, zombie apocalypse, somebody breaking into your house, someone assaulting you at Walmart, we would all think, at least most of us would think, that we would be prepared for any given situation. Well, I know what I would do in that situation. Well, I'd never let that guy or gal do that same thing to me as they did to that guy on that video or whatever it happens to be. And being mentally prepared, or I guess mentally proficient, situational awareness, I've talked about that a million times, that is all very important. Now, there's a fine line between having confidence in your skills, your preparedness skills, self-defense skills, firearm skills, whatever it happens to be. There's a fine line between being confident in your skills and I guess being arrogant, and sometimes your arrogancy can even invite some sort of confrontation. But so my girlfriend and I were driving today. We're out running a bunch of errands, and I consider myself a pretty good driver. And we're coming through an intersection that I've driven through a million times. And in the oncoming traffic lanes, in the left-hand turn lane, which would be, vehicles turning in front of us, a SUV rear-ended the vehicle in front of it without braking or barely braking. And we're, opposite lanes in the far right lane. So we had a left-hand turn lane, then we had a traffic lane, then our lane. Well, I noticed this SUV absolutely plow at about probably 40, 50 miles an hour into the back of a stopped vehicle. And it's funny, you hear situations when people describe them like this. It's almost like, it's like things happen in slow motion. And I think that when you have that feeling in hindsight, because in the moment things happen in a split second, and you don't have a chance to, and when it's over, you have a chance, and the adrenaline rush is gone. You have a chance to go back and actually try to remember everything that you did in what you saw or what you witnessed. And many, many times, like today, after this particular accident, when I got out of the car, I thought I knew what happened. And being a retired police officer, looking at the vehicles and the debris and where everybody was, it didn't happen exactly how I initially perceived it happening. So this vehicle plows into a stopped vehicle, and what I see is this SUV like riding over the back of this smaller vehicle. It's sideways, takes out probably some sort of sign, a no U-turn sign, and then launches the vehicle in front of it down into oncoming traffic, into our lanes. Well, the vehicle that was launched, and man, it was a good 75, 80, maybe 100 feet into the intersection, into oncoming traffic, when that vehicle not quite T-boned the vehicle next to us, which threw that vehicle, and I saw it out of my periphery coming right towards us. And I shouted an expletive to my girlfriend and said, "We're going to get hit." And, she's a very strong young lady, and she knew not to scream, not to yell, not to grab my arm or grab the steering wheel. She heard what I said. She saw what I was talking about. And she just said, "Okay, I need to let Keith handle this situation, because there really was no other choice, because I was the one driving. Either I was going to do a very good job or a very poor job. Well, I did a very good job, and I was, as the vehicle, the third vehicle in the accident came towards us, I was able to get over. As the vehicle, you think about it now, it was in slow motion. As I see this vehicle coming towards us, I'm able to maneuver our vehicle over to the side and literally was able to stop our vehicle as the other vehicle came to rest within about 5 feet from us, kind of at a 45-degree angle. Well, that's when my instincts kicked in as a retired police officer, put the vehicle into park, immediately jumped out and ran to the driver's side of the vehicle nearest to us. Now, the airbags had deployed. 2 people were inside screaming. Other witnesses and other folks were helping folks in the other vehicles that were just completely destroyed, debris everywhere. And if you know anything about airbag deployments in vehicle accidents, the powder is a super fine powder. And a lot of people believe that their vehicle is on fire, and rightfully so. You're in a total state of shock. You have no idea what just happened. Collision, people screaming, metal you can't see, and your glasses get knocked off or whatever. So you're in a complete state of shock, very disoriented. And a lot of people think their vehicle's on fire. Well, the doors were locked. A couple of the doors were, damaged to the point where I could not open them, and the people inside were screaming. So obviously they're not hurt, but so much because I can hear them yelling. So eventually we're able to get the rear door open. Now, if you have ever gone into a vehicle or been in a vehicle accident, very soon after it happens and airbags are deployed, one, do not touch those airbags because they are hot, almost too hot to the touch. Second, when you get that door open, or if you, unfortunately, you're inside a vehicle when the airbag's deployed, that stuff tastes terrible. It's very difficult to breathe. And in a kind of a state of panic, which I certainly understand, you would think, you can't breathe, you're choking, or the vehicle's on fire. So myself and another bystander are able to get these 2 people out of the vehicle, and they're in a complete state of shock, completely shut down. And I understand 100%. I'm not being judgy at all. So we got these folks over to the side, got them sitting on the curb, and then 3 police officers show up, and then fire and rescue. And when everybody was in good hands, we just went ahead and left. And it's one of those things where it was just instinctual that I jumped out of the vehicle to go help. Now, I don't necessarily think it has anything to do with being a police officer, but I just sprang into action, and my girlfriend and I talked about it. And about 15 minutes later, the adrenaline rush starts to wear down, and then you try to focus a little more. And we drove by the intersection later on this evening. We had more errands to run, and obviously everything was cleaned up, and we actually kind of drove through the intersection a little bit slower, looking at it, going, oh my gosh, there's where the sign was. This where and when you have a chance to look at it in hindsight, you're like, my goodness, that could have been a lot worse than it really was. We certainly could have been involved in the accident. But the reason I bring this up is, I was always taught in the police academy, and I'm sure it's in other police academies, in the military, and all sorts of other different disciplines, that in a time of intense stress, you will revert back to your training. So if you were trained well and you learned it, absorbed the information and the training, and practice, it almost becomes muscle memory. Your brain really doesn't have to think, oh, what should I do? Or what was I taught to do in this situation? You immediately react and hopefully bring, the situation to a peaceful conclusion or nonviolent conclusion, whatever it happens to be. So in the academy where we're taught that, and as a young academy recruit, I'm like, okay, whatever. But time and time again over my 26-year career, that actually came true many, many times. And it's difficult to say. I was never seriously injured as a police officer. So it's kind of interesting, if there's a tally board somewhere where you could go back and look. Of course, there's not, but it'd be kind of cool if you could go back and look at situations where, because I was prepared, because you were prepared, for whatever the situation is, a job interview all the way up to, a deadly force type situation, that you came out, on the winning end, relatively unscathed, a lot better than the other guy or other gal involved in the situation. And you came out in that condition because of the training and the mental preparedness that you had done days, weeks, months, years before. So it'd be nice to go back and see a little tally board, and kind of look at your career, your life, and be like, man, because I did this, I did not get injured. Because I did this, I helped these people. Because I did these things, I'm still, walking and talking today. When I was in field training, one of my field training officers me, okay, you're here at the stoplight, you see that bank over there, yeah, the whatever Bank of America. What if, as we sit right here, you see two men run out with ski masks and shotguns, just the stereotypical, bank robbery? What would you do? And we would talk about it. That's good, that's bad, let's try it again. Same thing, driving down the street. You go, the little blue Honda in front of you in the left-hand lane. Those plates are stolen and it's wanted in like a triple homicide. What would you do? And of course, we would talk through it. Oh, that's great. Nope, that's terrible. Oh, you're going to get us all killed. This is how, it should play out given the circumstances. And I did that when I was released on my own as a patrolman, driving around doing that just to try to pass the time hundreds and hundreds of times. What would I do? Now, again, I don't know, but I would hope that some of the times, or most of the times I did this mental prep in my mind, that it saved my bacon at least more than once. There was a particular situation where there was a bank robbery several miles away in a different part of the county. A vehicle description was given out, as well as a description of the three suspects, 2 people in the bank, 1 person in the getaway car. Dispatch ran the plate, and the plate, again, was in a different beat, a different radio channel, but the border between my beat and the other end of this particular county wasn't very far. Even though it was a different radio channel, I could be at the suspect's house in about 3 minutes. So I cleared with dispatch that we didn't have any undercover units sitting on the suspect's house. So I told dispatch I was just going to ride that way and just do a drive-by. And, all the vehicles not there, which is probably what probably would have happened if I ever got to the house itself. So as I'm driving down there, I start doing these little mental exercises. And again, you could apply, being mentally prepared, a little what would I do type situations to anything in the world. It doesn't have to be, a serious situation. So as I'm going over a very narrow bridge, as I'm approaching this bridge, I say to myself, what would I do if I crest this bridge and the suspect vehicle loaded with the bad guys who just robbed this bank pass me at the top of that bridge? 10 seconds later, I'm at the top of this bridge, and I shit you not, there was a suspect vehicle. Now, remember the scene in Point Break when, no, not Point Break, The Town, the one with the Dunkin' Donut commercial guy, the Boston accent, at The Town, when they're dressed up, they have the masks on, and they stop with the getaway car, and they look over to the left, and there's a police officer, a Boston PD guy, like working extra, like some road construction, and they like stare at each other, and, they make eye contact. That happened when we passed each other. We like looked at each other, and probably my face was in a state of surprise, probably as much as I was like, oh crap. And they were like, oh crap, it's the cops. I'm like, oh crap, it's the bad guys. And of course, there was no, I'd be a terrible poker player because it wasn't just, oh, I'm just driving. Oh, there they are, and just keep on going. I mean, it was literally, oh crap, there's the car. Well, I did exactly what I trained to do 10 or 15 seconds before. Shot down the bridge, got on dispatch, did a U-turn, and went ahead and chased the vehicle. And long story short, felony stop, bad guys go to jail, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But it's just one of those things where I'm not sure what would have happened if I just drove over the bridge. Oh, I'm just going to drive to the house and just, oh, nobody's going to be there. And I end up passing the car. What would I have done? I don't know, because I was prepared. Would I have stopped? Would I have froze? Would I have slammed on the brakes? Would I have raced down the bridge, then turned back around? Would I have done the exact same thing? We'll never know. But what it comes down to is being mentally prepared. Now, I'm not telling everybody to go and sit over their breakfast tomorrow morning and go, what happened? What would I do if someone kicked in my back door? What would I do if a bunch of ninjas fast roped out of a helicopter and, come crashing through my kitchen window or something like that? I'm not saying anything like that, but I think it is worth the time to just be situationally aware, be mentally prepared for any type of situation. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but it doesn't have to be these crazy law enforcement type situations. It can be something relatively small. I'm out chopping wood. What would happen if the axe glances off and hits my leg? Do I have a first aid kit, in my backyard? Do I have one in my garage? Do I have my cell phone with me? Am I wearing the proper protective gear? Something as simple as that. But, it's one of those things you don't realize how bad off situations are, or situations might get if you're not really prepared, if it truly is a surprise, if you freeze and you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to do in this situation. Last little story, my son and I, and this is when he was oh my gosh, 8, 9, 10 years old. I was obviously off duty. We were having lunch somewhere, and we just got to talking, and I think he brought up the question to me, well, Dad, what would you do if we were sitting in this restaurant? What would you do if this restaurant got robbed right now? If a guy came in, I think we're eating pizza at a pizza place, if this place got robbed? And I told him, I wouldn't pull, just like in Point Break and all that, the crazy security guard and the off-duty cop and that kind of thing. What I would do is we would get under the table, and I told him I would be the best eyewitness that the responding officers have ever seen. I would not place his life in danger, my life in danger, the danger, the citizens and the witnesses there in the restaurant. I would not place them at any more risk than we already are at if a guy comes busting in the door, trying to rob the pizza place. I would be a very, very, very good witness. Because I'm not going to be a cowboy. I'm not going to do any heroics. Now, situation will be slightly changed if the person came up to me, or I felt as though there was an immediate threat or harm, a loss of life for myself or my son. And, it's easy to say, oh, well, it's an absolutely deadly force situation. Well, it is. If someone armed is coming at me in a restaurant, give me your watch or give me your wallet, I'm giving them my wallet, I'm giving them my watch. But if at any time I sense that it's escalated or someone is going to get hurt and I'm armed, which I am when I'm off duty, then, I would obviously, take care of the threat in that situation. But, I'm not going to do anything foolish or rash to put my life or my son's life in this instance, or the lives of the other people in the restaurant, in any more danger, than they already are. And I'm sure there's a lot of, very bravado people out there, both men and women. Well, I just shoot the guy, come in here, I just do that. I'm not going to do that. This guy take my wallet. Well, that's on you. And like I've told my girlfriend before about being, armed when I say off duty, armed when I am, away from the house. And of course, when I was off duty police officer, I was always armed. But now when I'm retired, I'm also armed. I would never be able to forgive myself if I was put into a deadly force situation, a life or death situation, and I did not have my firearm and something happened to me, or a member of my family or my girlfriend or something like that. I wouldn't be able to live with myself knowing that all I had to do was to take my firearm, and be armed when I'm away from the house, like I am 99% of the time. So it's one of those kind of a cheesy. I'd rather be prepared and not have something happen than have something and not be prepared. When we talk about power outages, and currently folks in the Midwest, well, especially Alabama, Tennessee, and parts of Oklahoma and Kansas today, I mean, the tornado outbreak is terrible, and it's going to go on through the night. And luckily, it ended up being just severe thunderstorms when it hits Virginia late tomorrow or tomorrow early afternoon. But all the situations where, and you get into a situation where you're not prepared. So power goes out, so you don't have batteries and lanterns and flashlights, and the heat goes out. There's no power. It's and it's winter time. You have no way to to heat the house or your apartment. So you have a situation where you're not prepared and you wish you would have been. Folks down in Florida, hurricanes, up and down the East Coast, mid-Atlantic, without power, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. And I've said it a million times. 90% of the folks out there are not prepared and do not have enough food and water for 3 days, and that per person in the family. So if it's you and 2 people, you need to have a gallon and a half of water per person per day, food and that sort of thing that we've talked about before. So you have a situation where you're not prepared, either mentally or physically or logistically or material prepared, so you don't have the ability to be able to thrive and survive through this little disaster. So it's a situation where if I just would have done a little bit more preparation, we'd be in a better spot. If you're talking about the tornado or the hurricane or the power outage. Unfortunately, when you're put into a deadly force situation or a life or death situation, a lot of times, depending on how it irons out, you may not have that luxury of, if I just would have, had my firearm, if I just would have, got under the table, if I just would have ran out the back door, I wouldn't be deceased or severely injured. So I would much rather have, food and water and battery backups in the event something was to happen and not use them, as opposed to being put in a situation and not having the training or the material to be able to, thrive and survive and get through the situation. All right, folks, thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. While you're at it, help spread the word by leaving a rating and review.